16th, 2021 CPC meeting. Welcome everybody. I hope everybody's doing well. Marco, welcome.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Good evening.
So
Hi.
everybody got a copy of the agenda, I'm assuming. So let's just dive right in. Agenda item number 1 is a review of meeting minutes. Meg, you sent us the December 2nd, 2020 meetings. Do we have the September 16th yet? Okay, fine. So has everybody had a chance to review the December 2nd, 2020 meeting minutes?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Anybody have any comments or suggested changes? Anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of accepting the December 2nd, 2020 meeting minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody. Agenda item number 2 is a report on CPA finances from Andrew McMahon. I spoke with Andrew yesterday. He's not able to attend tonight's meeting. He's busy working on vaccine rollout. So I told him that I thought that was way more important than him. So we can wait a month for an update on I want that vaccine as soon as they tell me I can get it. So, so agenda item number 2 will add to our February or our next meeting agenda. Go ahead, Mike Falsetti, you have something?
Well, Kip, excuse me for interrupting. Do we have, or through Kip to Amy, do we have a ballpark on how much we have in our wallet to spend this evening? Is there any indication through Andrew may have spoken to you, Kip, on, well, yeah, we got about this much money, or we got about this much money, roughly? Any idea?
I didn't get an update from Andrew on my recent communications with him were email, and I didn't ask that question.
Okay.
My recollection from our last meeting, and it's, you know, my memory could be faulty, well, we were looking at somewhere around $1 million. Is that anybody? Amy, what do you have?
Well, I had actually, Michael, you asked me that question in email, and I told you what I believed it to be, and it was a lot less than that. I'm looking back at our emails to try to find, you know, oh, you asked dollar amount. I'm just having trouble finding that email, but I think it was something like 696 something. But of course, this was not, you know, from Andrew. This is based on looking at what Andrew said and what has been spent, you know, what has been assigned from the recent emergency awards. So that was my estimate to you.
Money on the 2 emergency applications. Those were both high dollar amounts.
Right. So I think that my estimate, I'm trying to find the email, was something like 696,000 something, but I'm still trying to find that email.
I'm just screen sharing Andrew's last report to us.
Yeah.
So this was prior to the last 2 pieces being approved.
So, Kip, Mr. Chairman, so it would be, and I'm just approximate, I'm not going to hold anybody to this. We've got about $1 million, but we got to take $480,000 of that off the board because we committed it to the library project and to the, oh God, the
Scott Tower.
Scott's Tower and the small and the fencing.
Yeah, yeah. So roughly, to give us, for the lack of a better term, give us a guide, would $600,000 be roughly what we have to spend until we hear from Andrew, just for the sake of guidance for this evening's meeting?
If you give me a few minutes, I can actually get the numbers.
I just found the email that I sent you, Mike, on this question. And my estimate was approximately $692,017 based on the ones that have been awarded.
And does that also have the 15,000 or so for the small grant
Yeah.
fund been carved out?
Yeah,
Okay,
So say 690,000, we think, is in the ballpark of what we have on our wallet to spend if we so
Right.
choose this evening.
Yes.
Okay.
but, yeah.
I know Mike Sullivan's not here, but are we aware, has the city council taken any action on the recommendations that we made for Scott's Tower and,
yes, they approved
Yeah.
both.
they did, okay.
All set.
So that's
Well as
a
the
definite
fencing, yeah.
take out. Okay, so let's,
And the fence.
to
So
answer,
all three.
so the question is a little less than, the answer I think is a little less than $700,000 available for projects, which applications we may receive, or have received. All right. I just got a text from Mike Sullivan. He's having a hard time connecting with Zoom. Amy, can you try to reach out to Mike Sullivan?
Well, okay, I'll have to mute myself and leave the meeting. Oh, wait a minute, somebody's trying to join right now.
JD.
I'll
Oh,
have to
that's
leave
Ja-
this meeting.
Jason.
I mean, I'll have to just go off into another room and try to call him. So I won't be here to be part of this meeting.
That's
That's
okay.
what you want me to do.
That's fine, please.
Okay,
Amy, you could just mute yourself to make the call, so you don't have to leave the meeting.
yeah. Something is slowed down right now though, and I can't mute myself, so.
I'm trying to guide him also, but sorry about the delay, everybody. Technology.
I mean, he could just go to the latest email from Amy. It's all right there.
Well, yeah, but sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, so I think we can move on to the rest of our agenda item number three. I'm sorry.
I just did the math and put in the chat the amount that's on hand based on Andrew's last budget minus the 18,000 for small grants, the 175,000 for Scott's Tower, and the 250,000 for the library. So that would leave 619,585.
Okay, great. Thank you. 600. Okay, and that'll be more important when we start talking about what the projects are than prioritizing funding. So we have agenda item number 3, which is the Holyoke Housing Authority Jackson Street Project Affordable Housing Restriction Modification Request. Matt, you're here. Do you want to kind of walk the committee through what you're looking for and kind of what the issue is, how we can help you?
Perfect. I appreciate it. I won't take up much of your time. I know you got a pretty full agenda. As you guys recollect, and we appreciate it, we applied for, you awarded us $120,000 last year. So we've been working with Amy as it relates to getting the necessary documents in place. At this point, we have received the contract. And as you recall, our application included both activity by the Holyoke Housing Authority and also by Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah.
And so we took an opportunity to review the documents as presented. And two things kind of came out. One is somewhat procedural and small in nature. And then one is a little bit more impactful. These are both in section 7B and E in the document that was sent to us. One asks for affordability in perpetuity, which is a little bit problematic as it relates to Habitat for Humanity's model. Typically speaking, they don't have the time or the resources to ensure affordability seller to seller to seller to seller from now to the end of time. So there's that obstacle that we have to kind of contemplate, and there might be resolutions in place, but it does create an issue. And so we wanted to ask the question about whether or not that is written in stone. And then the other one is just kind of problematic, and I hope you'll find it as small in nature as we do. But these are home ownership units, right? These are homes people are making investments in. And so I feel that they are a little bit different in nature as it relates to an affordable rental property. In the language you guys have asked for a permanent sign to be affixed to the side of the house that would call out funded by CPA funds. And like I said, I think I think that's just problematic in just the nature of the type of housing that's being produced. In a rental situation, I feel it's more warranted, and I would have no problem with. If you're talking about restoring historic windows at the city hall, it makes perfect sense to me. But if somebody's taking an opportunity to take a first mortgage on a property and is making a long-term investment, it seems to me that they might not want to have the fact that it was funded by CPA denoted on the side of the building. So those are the two issues that were that we wanted to highlight and talk through, but then I think what we also want to bring up, Kip, and we appreciate being able to talk these through with you and just get them on your radar for future conversation. I don't imagine we'll have answers tonight, but one of the things that we want to delve into, and the meat of the issue will be what the deed restriction is going to look like as it relates to the long-term affordability and resale of the home ownership units. And we've had some experience with multiple kinds of deed riders up at Oak Hill. We've had some that spanned all the way from 5 years all the way up to 30-year deed riders. And so we really want to make sure that the deed rider at the end of the day is a tool that protects the affordability and protects the public investment, but also at the same time ensures that we are not putting the end buyer behind the 8 ball. We have had some homes up at Oak Hill that required or had DHCD funding in them, and the deed rider's 30 years. And you need to have a Juris Doctorate in order to figure it out. I mean, it's problematic. And in these cases, we're selling to first-time home buyers. And so, like I said, it is a fine line. We want to make sure that public investment is protected and people aren't doing this as an opportunity to flip homes. But at the same time, we're asking people to make investments, put down payments, make sure that they're making the mortgage payments. And so, I think we have to be fair as it relates to what the deed rider looks like. And so just as an FYI, we have not signed the contract documents yet, in part because we have those two issues, but it's really imperative that we have a sense of what the deed rider is going to look like. And so we want to get these things on the radar.
Yeah, that sounds like in many ways, a research issue as well as a thinking this whole thing through issue. Because, I share, obviously, your concerns about flipping these properties. And I also, members of the public have spontaneously asked me about, is it fair to completely cut off the buyers from participating in the equity growth? And, do we want to pick on people, because they don't have as much capital as other buyers do? We want people to be able to participate in a capitalist economy on some level, but we also want to participate, obviously, to some extent ourselves, rather than this being just a straight gift and windfall to selected people. And I'm sure many, many communities will have grappled with this, and somebody has to have a set of good answers. And if you all have research that you can share with us, that would be great.
Yeah, we certainly will. And like I said, just up in Oak Hill, they're based on the nature of some of the different funding sources in different homes. We have seen people that have been disadvantaged by the idea that they are not able to take advantage of the uptick in the real estate market, and they should. And so we just
Yeah.
want to make sure that we're able to have hopefully a fruitful conversation with this particular body around the idea of getting a deed writer that does those things. You know, I think 15 years, but I'd be more than happy to work with Amy and give her what because like I said, we've had some experience with this, and what we feel is a good deed writer that takes into consideration those things, you know, fairness on both sides of the coin.
And just a point of clarification, we did share with Jenna in the law department one of the deed writers that we've used that we felt have been successful.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to us to have not only the language of the deed writers, but the basic policy conversation where everybody understands what we're balancing and how we're balancing it. The other thing that I think we may need to do, and we'll have to look at the terms of approval of the city council, is whether we put it through in a way that the permanent deed restriction was material to their approval. Because if so, we may have to go back to them for a revision of their approval. But we can look at that and see what the constraints are. And I'm sure Jenna will be able to advise us about that.
My recollection was that they made sure they were interested in the recapture. I don't recollect particular language as it related to in perpetuity affordability. You know, that in my mind, that's problematic for the housing authority, but more problematic for habitat. So we have to see how we split that atom as well.
Yeah, and obviously at this point, I'm talking for me rather than for the committee as a whole, but yeah, no, I'm very sympathetic to the policy problem.
Mike Falsetti, you have something you wanted to add?
Mr. Chairman, is that in perpetuity, is that part of the state language of the CPA creation? That the state said, look, if you're going to go down this route, it's got to be in perpetuity and it cannot be changed? Or is that something that we as a committee arrived at? Just for, does any?
Amy?
When it's an acquisition under CPA law, it has to be in perpetuity, but I consulted with Stuart Saganor today at the CPA Coalition, and he said when it's a situation like this, the law is silent. However, DHCD has to approve of whatever deed restriction it is, so he recommended we consult them and also do what we're doing now, which is to find out the reasoning behind the request for it to be a shorter length of time.
Okay. So, Mr. Chairman, we can arrive, what works well with Matt and us, if we arrive at, well, whatever your experiences has indicated, whether it be 20 years or 25 years or 10 years or 20 years, it's something that we can decide here as a local body. We don't have to bow to the regulations of the state. It's something that we can do here. I take it that's correct?
Well, DHCD does have to approve of it, so that's why we're reaching out to them.
Right, but the discussion or the decision that we reach, we can reach it as a body. We don't have to defer to the act of CPA creation and what it says. We can establish our own policy.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
With the approval of DHCD.
Right. No, that's fine. That's fine.
So, you know, I just want to mention too, another, not issue, but aspect of this, which is that, you know, I think as a committee, we had made a policy that we were going to review all of these contracts before they were executed by anybody. Well, before we executed them anyway. So, I mean, so we, you know, we do intend to get involved in, you know, now we're a little disjointed because, you know, we vote, then the city council approves, and then it goes to the law department and they dive in deeper, you know, at greater depth, and then it's going to you. We haven't seen it yet, you know, we haven't. So your timing is good for coming and having this conversation with us. And, you know, you know, I would recommend, you know, that you propose terms to the, you know, to the committee through Amy and, you know, to the law department and let them work out whether DHCD, and then we'll get one last bite at the apple before the documents get signed.
Perfect. That sounds,
But you know, I think you get a sense from the conversation that the committee's sensitive to these issues and open. It's not I don't believe there's a hard line in the sand. It's in perpetuity or we're done, you know. I think we have some flexibility and, you know, so.
yep, that's great. I guess that's all. I just,
Yeah.
like I said, I appreciate you guys getting us on the agenda, and we just wanted to kind of raise the issue.
Right. And I would
also
just
think
you
that
know,
the signage piece wasn't necessarily addressed.
yeah.
And I
Matt,
just,
go ahead, Matt. What would you, I mean, I was going to ask, you know, what would your suggestion be, you know, for some reasonableness for a sign? I mean, I understand 30 years of a sign hanging on the front of your house isn't very appealing, but, you know, during construction and for some period after, reasonable.
I think during construction, 1,000,000 bajillion %, no problem. You know, and I think the efforts that we try and have, at least at the, you know, our philosophy at the Housing Authority is that, you know, if you're building an affordable rental unit, you don't want it to be different than an affordable homeownership unit. And so I just, you know, and I could be way off the mark, but personally speaking, and I haven't really vetted this even through my board in a meaningful way, if I build a house with CPA funds next to a market rate unit, in my mind, there shouldn't be anything that denotes one from the other. You know, I think that people should be, you know, seen in the same light. And so I just, you know, that's my perspective. Might be significantly personal, but I just think that if
No, you don't want the stigma there.
that's kind of, thank you. That's kind of what that's it.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's probably not a big issue, but it's one of those things that I think.
I would
because
say,
he's got his hand up.
I guess I would say, how different is that than the Churchill homes when people buy the you know what I mean? They buy their houses in Churchill. They're technically Churchill homes. I'm not saying that we should slap something, and I agree, it doesn't make any sense to have something on the side of somebody's house. That's kind of messed up. But I do think that there's a way, maybe discreetly, to place it on the side of the fence, and it doesn't have to be forever. It could be.
It could even say something around the house initially was seeded through money from CPA.
Right,
and it wouldn't need to necessarily say, you know, this is affordable housing in perpetuity.
Yeah. I guess I agree with the house, like, not having a sign that's like blatantly out there.
Yeah.
Like, look at me, you know what I mean, type of thing. No, but if there's a way, I guess during construction or after, like a little bit after, maybe there's like a small little sign that could be put on the fence somewhere that.
Yeah, I imagine we could. I like I said, this is not.
I would say it doesn't have to be forever, but like, just because it is. I mean, I don't know. For me, the way I see it is, it's not my money. It's not our money. It's taxpayer money, and the house wouldn't be there if it wasn't for that, in a sense. Like, so just that's the only thing for me. I mean, I agree with the big sign there. That doesn't make sense. But if we can make it some way where there's an acknowledgement for a significant period of time, it doesn't have to be forever. I feel like it would be worth its while.
Yeah, if it could look a little or more like, you know, presumably if we had a program for historical reconstruction that was up and running, and somebody had their, you know, windows restored with CPA funds, even though it had always been a private house, we would probably put, you know, ask for there to be some plaque saying, you know, CPA contributed to this. And under those circumstances, it wouldn't be like, yes, this is affordable housing, guys, which is what we want to not happen here.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I think Kip said it really well, that, you know, this is not a line in the sand for the housing authority. It's something that I personally would prefer not to, but if I'm sure that we can come up with a solution that is acceptable to the CPA and is acceptable to the housing authority.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that we currently do have banners that are for, while something, you know, sort of temporary banners. They're not huge, you know, we've used them before, that they've already been paid for this purpose, just to go, you know, up while there's construction. Also, I just want to mention, so everybody is aware, that I'm having like a stuck cursor problem some of the time where I can't click on anything. So I've made all the CPC members co-hosts. So if you see anybody like Mike Sullivan trying to be admitted, if you could just click to admit him. I mean, right now I can do that, but I'm having some technical difficulties, just so you know.
Okay, and any luck getting hold of Mike Sullivan, or you?
No, I left him a message at the phone number I have for him. I also emailed him, and I emailed him the Zoom link again, and I haven't heard back from him. I gave him my phone number at the phone number I had. I don't know if you have a different phone number. If you want to put in the chat the phone number you have, I can try another number.
And send it privately.
I'll do. Yeah, how do I do that privately?
If you just go to click chat and then you do the drop down next to 2, you can find my name and click on that, and then only I will see the message.
Okay, great. Got it. Here it comes. Sorry again, everybody. You know, these days.
So Matt, am I right then in saying that the sense is that you're okay with sort of the regular CPA banner during construction, and then afterwards finding some sort of appropriate permanent way to acknowledge CPA funding? Thinking about like, what's the right responsive language that does not create stigma? I think you're muted, Matt.
My dog was barking. Yeah, no, I think we can come up with something that makes sense. As long as the CPA is open to the idea that it's going to be discreet in nature.
Yeah.
You know, as long as, you know,
yeah.
I was thinking something that, you know, like this house was built in 1776 kind of thing, that we could, you know, it's nice and easy. And so I'm sure we can come up with something that makes sense for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, great. Matt, does that answer your questions?
Yep.
You're all set. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys' time.
You're very
Thanks,
welcome.
Matt.
All right. Next on our agenda. So I have to pull up. Sorry. Anybody have it there? What's the next agenda item? I lost it trying to text Mike Sullivan. Other?
The next one, no, it's the FY 2021 funding request applications. That's the next one on.
Okay, so when I drafted the agenda, what I was thinking is not necessarily going through those applications as much as, you know, establishing the process. How are we gonna move forward with these things? How do we want to move forward with them? You know, do we want to? Go ahead. What do you want to do, Meg?
I'm gonna start funding some projects.
Yes,
Yeah. Well,
I agree.
I mean, how, I mean, my nature would be, I could look at them tonight and, you know, and vote on things, but,
Yes.
but I think, you know, there's some value in asking people to come and make presentations on them. Is it?
Oh, so the question is, do we want to set up like we had in years past where we have everyone come in and do their pitch?
Right. I think that's good.
And kind of establish a schedule for doing that. I mean, how many do we have, Amy, total?
If you include the resubmitted applications, which I think we are, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. I believe there's 9. So there's 1 resubmitted one for the Mayor Field improvements for parks. Well, it might be slightly different
Oh,
from
how many- we have 9 total. How many of them are resubmissions?
Oh, okay. The resubmissions are the one Holyoke CDC 2-family homes for 199,101, the first-time homeowners, and the hold on, let me see. Oh, the MIFA for 100,000 for the murals that was submitted in FY20. And I believe the Mayor Field improvements is pretty much a resubmission. It's the same amount of money. It's 210,000, but she did, she sent the application.
Okay, so that would leave 6 new applications and 3 resubmissions.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I have to look at the Mayor Field again, just to double check, because there might be some slight changes in it. I haven't been able to read through everything. I do want to mention the Wisteria Hearst one is already a known entity, but because they weren't able to do the fundraising because of the pandemic, they had a shortfall. So that's why they're not, it's not a resubmission, but it's that they weren't able to get all the funds that they expected. So, but it's for the same project. So that's an easier one, and that's for 55,000. Okay, Mike is calling me now.
I think we should take that up.
I'm sorry, Rose, what did you say?
I think we should take up Wisteria-Hearst.
Is Wisteriahurst the one with the electrical thing again?
Yes,
What do you mean by take it up?
just talk about it and maybe fund that 50,000.
Today?
Yes, today.
A motion? No.
Second,
Okay, so I mean, we have a motion and a second to fund $55,000 for Wisteria-Hearst
Backfill the rest of
additional
the
electrical.
yes.
Go- I'm sorry, Izzy?
No, I'm saying, so the motion is, I guess, to backfill the rest of the funds that they didn't make up to cover.
Right, to help them out.
Add $55,000 to their application.
Request, yeah.
So, I mean, okay, so we have a motion and a second to do that. I mean, open the floor for discussion.
Okay, can I just ask, as a preliminary matter, where we are with, we don't have an emergency application in front of us for housing funds for people who may be facing eviction as a result of the COVID thing. We don't know whether that's coming in, right? Because VOC has felt that they shouldn't ask us to take it up until they genuinely need the funds. So we've been putting that off month by month.
Can we ask Stephen Huntley if he has
Yeah,
something he wants to chime in with?
Steve, you hear where we are in the discussion that we're having, the deliberation about funding something out of our available funds in the amount of $55,000, which takes away from the pool and the potential to have money for an application for you. So I think the question is, can you give us an update on where you are in the application for housing assistance?
So we have, I was looking at the numbers this morning. We've referred 20 houses to the RAFT program, which is a separate program, but it's $10,000. So it's a much more generous program than our CDBG program that we have through the city. We've processed 24 households through that. We've spent somewhere around 62,000 of the money, or committed. Committed is the better word. Sorry, I shouldn't say spent, because I don't know. They're in different stages of the process, reserved or committed. And we were awarded just short of 250,000. So we're going through it. We're going through it as we expect we would go through it. And like I said, we're referring to every other program that may have a better fit for the benefit, which homeowners are eligible for the RAFT program as well. So it's important to note that we're working with all sorts of residents. So that said, we've spent or committed, 60 of 250. So we're not raising the alarm bells yet that we need additional resources. Are just I look at it every week, quite honestly, to see where we are, and I track our phone call to see if there are people that are in queue that we haven't done work with. And right at this point in time, we're doing okay. We expected somewhere around the 15th of January, people get their legs under them, they get their credit card bills from the holiday season, and that's when we hear more. We hear from more folks. I'm not sure that that was the case this year because a lot of folks did less under these current circumstances. So we're just kind of living and trying to figure out what happened in the greater world day to day.
So, Steve, is it fair to say that you still think you're going to be coming in with an application for some CPA funds to provide rental assistance?
Yes, I don't think it's going to be nearly as substantial as my initial thought was. And really, a lot of that is based on the RAFT program, frankly, because it is a far more generous program than I would have anticipated. $10,000 is a substantial sum to help folks get caught up on their mortgage or their rent payments or their utilities if their electricity gets shut off, or all of the above, right? And that's ultimately what it can be used for. So I never in my wildest dreams imagined they'd go above 3,000-4,000. So if there's someone whose electricity shut off, whose gas is shut off through the G&E, and how can we get all of that turned back on, plus get them in good standing with whoever they owe their housing money to. So really, if we're talking about it, I think we'd be talking about an application that's far less than the initial amount we put in.
Good. I think that's the information that the committee was looking for, correct?
Yeah, I just wanted to have some sense of what we were balancing against.
And I appreciate you thinking of us and the folks. Yeah.
So what else? Any other discussion? We have a motion and a second to fund 55.
I mean, I'd like to wait because if we're not gonna like jump the gun and go and look at all of them holistically, I tend to not like the you take off bites. Because I like to balance, like, okay, this money from this category, think of different stakeholders, see different parts of the city.
I guess the only reason why
Go ahead, Izzy.
I guess the only reason why I said motion for that one was because theirs is kind of like, if they don't get that funding, then they don't have the new electrical system that they need to get, right?
Yeah.
I know that they're already in motion.
Right.
Like they've been doing the work. So I like, that's the kind of piece where like, I'd love to.
That one is, for me, it's like, I don't know. I feel like that one is kind of like a Mando.
So I point out though, I think, right, even if we were to vote for it, to recommend it to the city council, it would go to the city council, go through their process. Let's just say they approve the funding. That funding wouldn't be available until July, correct? I mean, we're talking fiscal year 2021 money.
We should have that already, though.
Mike Falsetti.
It's not a big ticket item. Wisteria Hearst is an iconic building in Holyoke. $55,000 is not a lot of money in the scheme of things. To know the certainty that they have the money in the bank, if you will, provides a certain degree of satisfaction, knowing they can conclude the electrical work, and the contractors, and since they got the place shut down because of the COVID, this is the opportunity to do everything, get it done once, and put that baby to bed. So it's not a lot of money. It's an iconic institution. This $55,000, it'll make their life a lot easier, and they'll sleep better tonight, believe me, knowing that they got awarded this much money. If it goes in July, that's okay, or whatever it takes, it takes. But the fact is, we've approved it, and that makes a world of difference to the contractor, to the engineer, and to the folks that volunteer at Wisteria Hearst. It does, even though it may not be till June or July, the fact that it's been approved, that makes a world of difference.
I 100% agree with what you just said. And I think that the other side of the argument, however, is you know, do we take this out of order and consider funding this without reviewing all of the applications and having discussions about those? And I'm not tipping my hat which way I'm going to vote. I'm just saying that I do think that that is a legitimate consideration for committee members to make. So anybody else want to chime in on this motion and second to fund Wisteria Hearst?
Well, I should probably repeat for the record what I just sent everybody in chat, which is that on the one hand, I agree with Meg in principle. Ideally, we would look at everything holistically, but this is a low dollar amount, relatively speaking. And honestly, I think it's a no-brainer. I think that if we wait and listen to everybody who's applied, we're still going to approve this because it is an iconic building. We have reviewed it. We know what the need is. And under the circumstances, I'm willing to go forward with it tonight.
Okay. Anybody else want to comment before we call for a vote?
You know, I'm just for process. I think we're in charge of our process and we shouldn't invent emergencies that don't exist. They're not going to explode in the next week. I just think we could decide we're ready to hear proposals. We want to hear presentations in a week. We want to hear presentations in 2 weeks. And we could move forward very quickly if we want to. Like, I'm scanning the list. I have a sense of where I'm at. I'm interested to hear what people have to say, but I feel like we could move a lot faster than we have in the past because this has become much more of a greased wheel kind of process.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we're not going to fund it. I think we are. I'm just saying I don't think we need to invent this as an emergency. I don't think it is. I don't think we have to do anything outside of a process.
So,
we can start funding projects in 2 weeks.
Rose?
so I don't think it's an emergency. If you want to schedule a meeting quickly, then I think we need to start to look at projects because we're waiting way too long on projects.
Yeah.
Well, let's, how long have we had the applications?
It feels like a long time.
Let's get going.
We've had them like 2 weeks. So we're,
No way.
It's because we looked at them in eligibility. So it just feels like it's been a long time.
Right, I guess that's it.
I mean, I agree as a goal, right? We should be able to move through this process as a committee faster than we have in years past. We understand the process better, so I agree 100%. I think we can, I said it before we even started talking about this, is, my hope we could get through these things quickly. The question is, do you invite people in to make presentations? Now, someone, as allowed by our rules, someone has made a motion and a second to fund Wisteria Hearst, to recommend funding of Wisteria Hearst. We're deliberating it. So, I think this is a good, healthy process.
I think it is too.
I think there's valid arguments on both sides of it. So anybody else want to add something before we call for a vote?
Yeah. Let me just say this. I think that Wisteria Hearst is like, you don't really need to invite them in. We already know the project and we know that they just didn't get the funding because of the times. And so they're asking us for help. And we love the project. I think we all like the project and we all invested in Wisteria Hearst. So this one seems like taken out of context is okay. Because I don't think they're going to add anything to the mix if they make a presentation.
Okay.
No, I think the point, and Meg's point, is that as a procedural matter, we ought to be looking at them all at once, not that we need to haul Wisteria Hearst back in to present again.
Okay.
And
then I feel better about that.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, I don't think it's an emergency either. I just
no,
think
I don't.
There's no, we know what's going to happen, and therefore I don't have the same concern about would we make a different decision if we were hearing from everybody at once.
Right.
But, I'm willing to go either way with this. I don't think we'll make a different decision if we hear from everybody at once.
I don't know that either. But, I do know that when I'm doing my own deliberations about what projects I want to support recommending funding for, I do it while I'm, considering all the applications. So this is a little bit outside of that kind of comfort zone for me. That, but you know, I mean, I do think maybe in hindsight, right, this should have been considered as an emergency application. That would be more in keeping with our kind of established program. But here we are. So we have a motion and a second. We've been deliberating. You know, we have a quorum. We can, unless anybody has anything else they want to add, I'm ready to call for a vote.
Perfect.
Anybody else want to add anything? No? All right. So we have a motion and a second to fund Wisteria Hearst, recommend funding of Wisteria Hearst $55,000 to help them complete financing of the electrical upgrades, which is part of a project that we did recommend and the city council authorized funding for in the last funding cycle. So all in favor of funding the Wisteria Hearst $55,000 application?
Aye.
All right.
Is that everybody?
Yep.
Yes.
Izzy, did you vote? Okay, so, all right, so finished, correct?
Correct.
Passed, I think it was unanimous.
Mhm.
Okay, so.
So next time we consider everything so that we're not in this situation again.
Yes, I agree with that.
Correct. So, well, unless someone else makes a motion to and gets a second to fund something outside of our normal cycle, that's what the way I would expect we would proceed. So, you know, again, when I put this on the agenda, I didn't expect that one, we would even be like really discussing the specifics of the applications or what they are. Was more, you know, were we going to establish a calendar for reviewing and making recommendations? Do we, you know, and look, if it's the will of the committee to not invite applicants in to make presentations, and that we would prefer to just read the applications and start deliberating about funding recommendations at our next meeting, I'm good with that too. So how do we want to, you know, we have had kind of our normal process or evolving process. How do we want to go forward with these 2021 applications? Anybody? Rose, I saw your hand up.
Yeah.
Somebody
So
wants to...
I like having people come in. I like asking questions. You know, I have a few questions about Pulaski Park that I don't think that the Mike's presentation was very informative. So, you know, I just want to, I love the project and I can't wait to see it happen. But I also think that it's to have somebody come in and be there so we can ask questions is a good idea.
Yeah.
Anybody else have input on that? How they feel about this process?
Yeah,
Mike, what do you want to do? You want to invite people in for presentations, split them up into 2 meetings, and
Yeah.
Mike Falsetti?
I don't even think we need 2 meetings.
Do it all in one.
We only have 8. Last year we had a lot more in terms of pure numbers, so it made sense to divide. I don't know if we would need to this time around.
Okay.
Yeah, plus I don't see why we need to hear from people we've heard from once already. You know, if they submitted in and they're now resubmitting, we know their projects.
Correct.
Right.
Agreed.
So we have 6 new applications, 5 now, right? We just took care of this. We have
There you
5.
go.
So is that what we want? Mike, go ahead.
As an aside, Mr. Chairman, I mean, do we really need to have the JFK Memorial explained to us? It's $6,000.
I don't think it's even so much for us also as it is just a piece of community. Like it's just on the public record. They've done a 5-minute presentation. They've said what their project is.
Well, read it.
All the other ones have
just
publicly already done
read
that.
The report. Just read the report. There's not much to it. I mean,
Well, I can, but the public doesn't have access to that report. So it's just about public access.
What are other people?
$6,000.
What are other?
I think the more publicity we get with CPA where people can actually access what we're doing is a good idea. And even if it takes 5 minutes of our time, it gives people, there's a lot of people who chime in and just, they want to see what the projects are and what we're doing. And I think it's important to give it to the public and not have them have to go dive in and try to find it.
There are only 4 new
$6,000
projects.
for a memorial for
But
$6,000?
it doesn't matter, Mike. It's a 5-minute presentation.
Marco, Marco,
okay.
you want to?
It's okay.
I was going to say that big or small, everybody should have an opportunity to
agree.
say something, because I think it's a matter of record. I do believe that there should be some kind of maximum. Like, I don't know, if one only takes 5 minutes, fantastic. But I don't think they should go more than like, what, 20 minutes,
Oh, no.
30 minutes?
10.
Like,
10
let's do
minutes.
15 minutes, just, but like pre-announced
If
so
you
that they
say 5,
tailor
it
their
will be 10.
presentation to the right time length.
We have last year we did that very thing. 5 minutes for presentation, 5 minutes for questions. So
Okay, that's good. I like that.
and it's up to us too to have that discipline. So is the consensus that we would invite each of the applicants, not people who have resubmitted because they've already made their presentations, but to invite the remaining applicants to come in and make a 5-minute presentation, be prepared for 5 minutes of questions for each of the applicants at our next meeting?
Yes,
Yes.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
that sounds good.
Okay.
Well, it depends on how fast you want to move in terms of like, well, when is the next meeting?
Well, that was going to be the,
Yeah.
that's the next question. Like when, I mean, I don't see anything that can't wait a month. I mean, I don't think we need to ourselves start meeting every other week or every 2 weeks for this purpose. A month from now, is way ahead of the schedule that we had last year. Mid-February, we get presentations, and then, we can decide whether we want to take votes that night, wait 2 weeks or 4 weeks and take votes. I'm good with either one. I mean, I would think that if we get an hour of presentations and we have, right there, an opportunity to make motions for funding and take votes. So let's put that on the agenda for our next meeting. And hopefully Andrew can come before all that starts and just make sure we have the right numbers and so we know what we're working with. So do we have a consensus about that as a next meeting agenda? And how do we feel, is a month from now okay with people? Anybody anxious to meet before that to deal with this? Mike?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to meet tomorrow, but I think you're right about Mike Sullivan and getting how much money do we have in our wallet to spend? That's the first thing we have to do.
Yeah.
And once he makes his presentation, no more than 15 minutes, and just says, look, you guys, you got $10 in your wallet, divide it up anywhere you want, you got $10. That's all we want to hear.
Yeah.
And then from that point, now we can go forward.
I'll make sure he understands that we're planning on voting to recommend projects at our next meeting, and what we really need is a focus on what we have available for projects.
Yeah,
just confirm what we have,
Can we do it sooner than a month?
We could try to meet, 2 weeks would be January 27th.
I'm happy to do that if that's the will of the committee.
Sure.
People good with that?
Yep.
Then we could hopefully finish deliberations on the 10th of February.
That would be great.
Can Mike make it?
So I'm assuming today we're going to be reviewing the applications then for that
So
to vote the next time then, right?
Yeah, so we'll review them at our next meeting with the applicants, right? They'll come in, make presentations. We'll have the applications with us. We can ask questions.
So we're not
I guess
today.
I'm having a hard time hearing you, Izzy, sorry.
I said, so we're not gonna review any of them today?
I wasn't planning on it. Do people want to do that?
No, I thought, no, that's fine.
No.
I'm not, whatever you
I
guys,
don't,
that's fine.
I mean, I just thought today would be more of a, should have been clearer, and when I described the agenda item, of just more like establishing our next couple steps.
That works too.
So everybody's, Amy, what did you want to add?
So I'm just hoping that everybody will be able to come in for the next meeting on the 27th, because you're saying that you'd like all the applicants to present in 2 weeks' time. If they can't do it, you know, I don't know, should we allow them another date?
Yeah, we'll work with them.
Yes.
You know, we'll establish that there's someone who couldn't make it for that meeting. We'll work with them to get them in front of us, or we'll vote to fund their project and we'll save them a trip. So,
Just mail them the check.
just send them the check. Okay, so what were we talking about? Meeting in 2 weeks?
Yeah, talking about the 27th.
So January 27th, we'll meet to review for presentations and begin deliberations, maybe complete deliberations, correct?
Yes.
Sure.
So Amy, you'll reach out to all the applicants and see if invite them to that
Sure.
meeting.
Yep. And so they can also, if they have a brief slideshow, they can do that too, like share screen for 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, well, I think we made progress with that. I can hear somebody, but okay, so we're moving on to our next agenda item, which is other. And you had some back and forth with Steve Huntley that you wanted to bring to the attention of the committee at tonight's meeting and get some direction.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, and there's one other point as well, a different topic, but yeah, for the Chestnut Street properties, the extension request, there was no date. Oh, I think Mike is here. Yay. All right, so he's joining us. I'm just gonna make sure.
Maybe he's only on phone. Oh, there you are.
It is.
Yay, I solved this technical problem.
Woo!
Hey.
Welcome.
Okay.
Welcome. So, do you want to hear what you missed?
No.
No.
Yeah, can we start over, please?
No, but I could give you a 30-second rundown.
Okay.
No, well, I mean, so what did we do? We had Matt Manville talking about looking for some flexibility in the deed restriction about the affordable housing and hanging a sign on the house and maybe stigma that comes along with that. So he's going to propose some, some terms for both of those items. Then we started discussing a plan for moving forward with the fiscal 21 applications. And we just worked out a schedule for that, which is we're going to meet in 2 weeks, there are 5 applicants who are going to come in, make 5-minute presentations. And then we may start deliberating on that day, or we may schedule another meeting to make our recommendations to the city council. And while in the midst of discussing that, a motion and second was made to provide Wisteria Hearst with, I'll refer to it as a supplemental $55,000 so that they can finish the electrical work or have confidence that that electrical work will be financed. And that motion and second passed unanimously. So the timing of it is a little bit in question for me. Like, we are talking about fiscal 21 projects, so they may not have access to that capital until after the 1st of July. But in any case, we have voted to recommend funding of $55,000 to Wisteria Hearst. And, there was some discussion about taking something like that out of context with the other applications, and we beat that up pretty good before taking a vote. So now we're talking about other on the agenda, and it is, Amy was just starting to tell us what's up with Steve Huntley. And
So I've only got one question is, on the 55,000, why would we have to wait till July?
I'm not
I've been saying the same thing.
No, we don't.
sure. I'm not sure we do, Mike, but I think, what we have tried to, we need to know whether we have that cash available now, or whether that's money that is part of the fiscal 21 budget cycle, and it would come out of that. And the sense that I got was that it wasn't a big issue for Wisteria Hearst. It was more, as long as they know that that money's coming to them, they could wait until then.
Okay.
But it's still an open question, I think, as to whether they do or don't have to wait.
I just want to mention that we're currently in FY21, so these are the funds that we do have.
Well,
Just
correct, but we have always funded in the next fiscal year money that we're recommending in this fiscal year. It's always,
well, that's usually what we're supposed to do, but that's not how we've actually not been doing that. We've been doing it for what we have this fiscal year.
but funding for next, funding released after the 1st of July. Nobody's got money before then.
I think that they do. They can have it before the 1st of July. But yeah, oh, you're right. Usually we don't end up releasing it after. That's true, but it's still from that pot of money. Yeah.
Correct. That's right. It's like we have cash in hand. We're not, and I know we had a long discussion about this in a meeting a year ago, whether or not we should be releasing funds this fiscal year that we're collecting this fiscal year. But I think the policy has been, we'll collect them this year, make recommendations awarding, and we know we have it in our pocket, then it starts going out. So, but we're a little
Also, as a practical matter, it's taken us many months to actually get contracts out. So whatever we intend to do, there's
plenty of money sitting in there.
Okay, I'm all set.
It's always good to look at what the reality is. So you're right, Mimi. So there we are. So I think you're up to speed. Amy, you were just going to start talking about.
So yeah, I know that Mike is going to put the recommendation for the Chestnut Street extension on the next city council agenda. So I was looking over, the information on that, and there's actually there's a line that says automatic termination date if additional funds needed for this project are not obtained. But there's no dates put in there. And I also looked back at the original contract, and we didn't, unlike 123 Pine Street, which is being rescinded, we did not have an automatic termination date if the full funds are not received, only for the completion of the construction. So I've been communicating with Stephen on this, and he suggested following the same date as Wayfinders. So I looked at Wayfinders, and that was determined to be September 1st, 2021. That we had said that Wayfinders could request, so that's basically it. September 1st, 2021 as the automatic termination date. So that's what I just need. That's the last piece of information I need, because it seems important since, since the funding wasn't obtained at the time that, that VOC had hoped for, that, that's the reason for this extension. Therefore, we don't want to end up in the same, probably the committee doesn't want to end up in the same boat again. So we want to define that for the contract going forward, for the amended contract.
So you're suggesting September
September 1st, 2021 as the automatic termination date of CPA funds if the additional funds, which is the bulk of the funds, are not obtained. Because the reason that we're CPA awarded this is to be like a local match in order to get the, I think it's, help me out, Stephen, isn't it the DHCD funds or the,
Yes, it's
yeah.
a mix of tax credits and other funding that DHCD handles. It's somewhere around 9 million is what we're applying for.
So, but didn't we already include that, a date for that funding as September 1st that's matching Wayfinder?
No, well, I don't know if we talked about the an automatic termination date for not obtaining funds.
Don't we have that in there for the, being awarded those specific funds?
Right, because they won't be able to use the CPA funds unless they do have, you know, the rest of this 9 million. So rather than just encumbering it, you know, and not knowing how long we're encumbering it for, you know, putting in something specific in there about that. Just like was done for Wayfinders.
My impression from watching the debate at City Council over this was that, and of course Mike can tell us more clearly, was that having that drop dead date was quite important to the City Council and really made it much easier to get the approval through.
That sums it up. There's not much to add to that.
The deadline, am I understanding that if we approve a deadline extension, the deadline extension itself has to be approved by City Council? Or can we just do that internally?
Yes. We have to have the deadline extension approved by City Council in this case, because when we originally had the thing before them for its first run, we had a drop dead date in there and it was material to the approval. And that being the case, you know, we can't outrun what the City Council has authorized us to do.
And if I remember correctly, the contract has specific language that the dates can be extended by the CPA with the approval of the City Council, which is, so yeah, that's why it's in front of the council to get this deadline extended. So, I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I thought we already had voted to have, if they didn't get this DHCD funding by September 1st, then it would drop dead. Is this another deadline? So maybe there was no.
I think it's the same deadline. And I think it's just a matter of confirming that it's an automatic termination provision.
Oh, Steve, you want to help us?
And from my perspective, it didn't make it to City Council for the last meeting, and it was a robust agenda among robust agendas. I mean, I unplugged at 11:30 and they were still going strong. So I certainly get it and appreciate the work the council does and don't mean to diminish that at all. I just wasn't sure the path to get it from this group to City Council, and if there was any way to help that, if it should go through Dave Bartley's group, Councilor Bartley's group, as the other awards do, or just any help I can get to take last time's vote and help project it forward to get the council engaged.
Yeah, and you know, I would certainly hope, and again, you know, I'd have to defer to Mike Sullivan here, but I would think it would be possible to, under the circumstances here, bring it up before the full council immediately and not have to refer it to committee first. I mean, is this too complicated for that, do you think?
No, I can definitely give it a shot.
And is
the worst that can happen is they engage in a bunch of questions and it gets sent to committee. But
and you know, the other thing, and I meant to ask this earlier, is if it would be at all useful, I could certainly make myself available to answer any technical questions that come up with this.
Hang out at the meeting. As long as you remember, you could be sitting there for hours before it comes up, you know?
Well, yeah, but
so
applicants to put up with this whole process, and
Yep.
You know, anything I can do to make it easier for the city council, I'm willing to do.
Yep. Well,
So just for clarification, I pulled up our December 2nd meeting minutes, and under this agenda item, I note that there might be a typo, Meg, because the second to the last sentence says the committee will recommend a 12-month extension based on funding be awarded by September 1st, 2020. So that should be 2021. But it's there in our last meeting minutes that we addressed this. So
Okay, so why don't we just finalize the paperwork and have Amy send it over to Mike, I don't know, tomorrow?
Sure.
so we have that in there. All right. So Stephen, does that satisfy your needs?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And believe me, I get how busy council is, and setting tax rate took precedent over the extension of our CPA grant. I mean, I'll be the first one to say that out loud and publicly, and appreciate the work they do. I just wanted to make sure we had a path and it didn't get lost in the shuffle. That's all.
Okay.
So thank you all.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Stephen.
So that seems to, anybody else have any comments on that agenda item, or we'll move on to, Amy, you said you had
Well,
something.
Stephen did bring up the question of whether there should be something in the contract saying that they have the option of asking for a 4 to 6 month extension. Although this itself isn't an extension that we're just trying to get through. So just for the sake of the law department, it would be good to know the answer to that. Although I guess we have time because we still have to see if this gets approved by city council.
What did we do with Wayfinder? Did we give them that deadline and then another 4 to 6 month extension?
We said that they could ask for a 4 to 6 month extension at that date, at which could be accepted or denied by the CPC.
I mean, I think that's harmless enough language. Does everybody agree with that, to put it in there? I mean, if it's approved by us and the city council, there seems to be plenty of control over whether that money is continued to be tied. It's not an automatic extension, right? It would just be take the will of this committee and the city council. Probably makes sense to include that language in there.
Yeah, and I guess it should be clear that it would not have to go back to city council if you all did decide to grant that extension.
Well, how does
the council wanted to do that?
Right, I think it's safer to put it in there with the city council approval also.
Oh, okay.
well,
Mike, you're a city councilor. What do you think?
no, I think we should try to have it that it's granted with the authority of the CPA to extend it at their discretion.
Okay.
Give it a try. The worst they could do is say.
I'm good with that. Does anybody feel differently about it?
No, if the city council is willing to give us the authority, by all means.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, but we've run into this, right? So the city council won't see this contract before they vote. They won't really, unless we tell them that that's one of the terms of the agreement, they won't know that.
Oh, we have to tell them. I mean, that
It'll
has
go in the chart that Amy
Yeah.
creates for them
Okay.
to look at in the orders.
As long as it's spelled out clearly at the beginning, then I think we're good.
Yeah,
They need to do their homework.
No, we need to inform them, and they need to decide whether they're willing to do it. But
well, really, they should be seeing the contract. I mean,
well,
Wow, that's a lot of people looking at the
This
contract.
is,
it's
I'm
most. I got to be careful what I say these days, but you send them a copy. Some people aren't going to look at it.
well.
well,
I
I
know
thought it was not going to have a contract.
I think maybe, Mike, you raise a really great suggestion, which is that, we forward the contracts to the city council members, and they can comment on them, they can make an order, they can deal with them, but at least they've been informed before they're signed.
Well, but what's the point? Because they have to vote on these things based on the term sheets we send. it can take many months to generate the contract. By then they've approved it. They have to.
Right.
And we are just adding extra bureaucracy. I mean, I have no problem with their seeing them, but what's the point?
Well, for informational purposes, so that if somebody has an issue with one of the terms in the contract and they want their input, it is not a logical progression the way we do this, and it is we're working with some constraints and we're doing the best we can. But, this is kind of the mess we got in with some of these early ones. We're giving them terms. They can't include every term of the contract. They're voting to approve, and then the contracts are getting negotiated and executed without them seeing what's getting signed.
Well,
So
that's because we screwed up. The one contract where we have a real problem, too many cooks, we didn't all look at it, but we should have caught the errors there. And thank God, actually, I'm really grateful that this is now going back to the city council, because now they can regularize the situation for us however they vote. But that was our mistake. That was not a mistake with the process. We give them the material terms, they vote on them, then we're bound.
Right, but then we're drafting agreements, and the agreements may have additional terms that they haven't reviewed and approved, or like Matt Manville is asking for some changes in the preservation. If the city council had already voted to fund that, now we're messing with another agreement without the city council's input. That's all I'm saying. Like, it's not a straight line, and the reason, I think, is because it takes so long to get the contracts from the law department once the city council has acted. So it's like the cart is before the horse.
Yeah, except that there's no point. We now know there's a great deal of work that goes into drafting one of these contracts. There is no point in putting everybody through that and burning the law department's time before we even know whether the city council is going to approve something.
Well, yes, except in practice, we're batting 100%, or we're batting 1,000. I mean, they haven't not approved anyone. So look, I don't know what the resolution to this is. It's not a perfect system. We're doing the best we can. So we'll do, I think the important part is to do our best in presenting the council with the terms.
Yeah.
But then the question becomes, when there's some change to those terms, do they look at them again?
Yeah, well, that's why I think we need to do our best to figure out in advance what are material terms and what are just, boilerplate, basically. And we need to, with something like the Mike Manville situation, just look back and see whether there is anything in there that a reasonable city council would have relied on when they made that vote that we promised them that we're now changing. If so, we go back and ask. If not, then we don't have a problem and we just figure out what the correct answer is. But there is a difference between material terms that we would expect the city council to care about and stuff that, just as we defer to the law department, we don't sit around and say, well, gosh, I think that incorporation clause or that termination clause ought to say, be phrased this way instead of that way. We trust them to do that.
Right, but now we've also added in as a committee that we want last looks at those contracts before they get executed. So there may be language in there that we want to see changed.
Which I think we ought to discuss, but the reason that I think that that's a good thing is because we have had this haphazard issue and we have had contracts that got through with mistakes. And I think that they got through with mistakes because everybody thought somebody else was checking them.
Okay, so what do we do? I forget what we're talking about. What are we doing here?
I think we're, if the city council or our representative from the city council would like us to routinely send contracts as they're about to be executed, we can do that. My only concern here is that we not attempt to present entire contracts when we go for city council approval, because it is a significant burden on the legal department. It will slow down the entire process, and it is clearly not what any other CPA community does.
Okay, so what are we doing with the contract extension for Steve and the dates there? We're all set on
dates in, and we are including a term in the term sheet and the accompanying memo that will say, in the event that these specific grants don't come through timely, but the VOC asks and the Community Preservation Act Committee agrees that there is a material likelihood of getting other grants to, that would have the same effect, the CPA may extend the term of the agreement and the grant up to, say, 6 months. And if the city council comes back and says, we want to have a look at that too before authorizing it, I think we would all be, agree that that's completely within rights. The city council and it can't make things more liberal, but it can make our suggestions less liberal. So if they wanted to just say, we approve on condition that the city council has to approve this, set extension too, they can do that on the floor at the next meeting.
Okay.
But if they just approve it as it is, then we can go ahead and authorize the extension should it become necessary.
Okay, good. Sounds like a plan. Stephen, that works for you?
Sounds great. I thought I muted myself. Sorry for the pause.
That's okay, no worries.
Sounds terrific. Yeah, and I get we're creating systems as we go, and we're flying the plane as we're building it, or whatever the crazy analogy we want to use here is, and that's all I'm trying to help be a part of. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Amy?
Stephen.
Thank you, Stephen. Amy, you said you had something else?
Oh, yeah. There was also the rescission agreement attached, which came from, which was sent already to you, Stephen, about 123 Pine Street. It was drafted by the city's law department. So
I didn't see it. Was it emailed to me?
I believe so. Maybe the committee I thought was going to look this over first. Yeah, I believe it was sent to you. I'll look in my email and see if it was.
Who sent
Would
it?
it
Do you know?
come from Jenna Wellhoff in the city's law department?
Okay, I can look through my emails. I do know that name, so I wouldn't have deleted it thinking it was a spam or something, but.
Does the committee have any interest in getting involved in reviewing that agreement, the rescission agreement, or just let the law department?
Let them handle it. That's
Yeah,
their
let
job.
I'm happy for Jenna to handle this.
Good, so it's, all right.
Great.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at the email. I think I found it, so I might be able to re-forward it to you if this is the right one.
That'd be great.
All right, anybody else
Yes,
have any other?
He did send it. But if Stephen agrees to the rescission, so there's no need for anyone else to see it then, it can go forward.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay.
I think that's the will of the committee. Any other agenda items? Anybody have anything else? No? So we've scheduled our next meeting already, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
27th.
Well, hoping,
Anything?
27th.
January 27th.
Correct.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else got anything they want to say? Anybody want to make a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Second, who seconded? All in favor? Good night,
Aye.
everybody. Stay well. Talk to you in a couple weeks.
Yes, stay well.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Have a
Yeah.
good evening.
Thanks,
Good night.
guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.